So hello, everybody, and please welcome our panelists for today's panel discussion. And it's really great that we are quite geographically dispersed. So I'll try to locate you all when I introduce you. So meet May Michelson, who is now in Israel. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So
Tel
she's
Aviv City.
Hi, May. So she's a Senior Director of Global Sales at JK8, a cybersecurity company that offers a high-security custodian technology for managing and safeguarding digital assets. Please meet Malte Pollmann, Chief Security Officer at Ultimaco, who is now in Germany,
Hello.
right?
Hello from Germany.
Hello. So Ultimaco is a company which has been developing hardware-based high-security appliances and compliance solutions for telecommunication provider regulations. And it's Thomas Kurl in Austria.
Yes, streaming from Vienna.
Hello. So Thomas is team lead or principal security consultant at SecConsultant, one of the leading consultancies in the field of cyber and application security. And last but not least, we have Dr. Rytis Rainys, who is in Lithuania right now.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Rytis is director at National Cybersecurity Center of Lithuania, which is the main Lithuanian cybersecurity institution responsible for unified management of cyber incidents, monitoring and control of the implementation of cybersecurity requirements. And we have a very interesting topic today: cybersecurity meets fintech. In terms of cybersecurity and fintech, there have been two great trends recently. So the first one is that with the emergence of new wave of internet users from rural and semi-urban areas, digital financial inclusion initiatives are most susceptible to data breaches that involve consumer frauds such as phishing, for example. And secondly, it's the COVID-19 crisis aftershock. It has been already mentioned throughout the couple of days of FinTech Week that COVID crisis has fast-forwarded the digitalization of the economy and our lives in general. There has been a major shift away from cash due to sharp decline in face-to-face interactions because people are afraid of viruses being transmitted through banknotes and coins. So fintech companies that provide contactless solutions have been booming. In this discussion, we aim not only to identify what cyber dangers may currently affect fintechs, but also to take a peek at what the future holds. So I would like to open with a question for all. How do you feel cybersecurity landscape has been changing recently? Do you see any tendencies different in your country to other countries? So let's start with May for this question.
Sure. So I think the cybersecurity landscape has changed dramatically over the past few years. If in the past you can only be in the same network with someone and just monitor everything that's going on in their network, nowadays people are much more aware for their security, of their privacy, the anonymity that they want. Much more traditional assets and assets are becoming digitalized, which incentivize the hackers to do more hacking, whether it's based from ideology that you want to hack a certain country, a certain organization, whether it's much more money that you can gain, or whether it's the reputation. So we see many more hacking events happening, whether it's in 2018 that more than $1 billion were stolen on digital assets, or last year that more than $4.6 billion were stolen on digital assets. I believe that this trend will keep growing and growing. If you ask me about territory, in Israel, we are facing cybersecurity threats all the time. Me personally, I earned my stripe serving in the Israeli Air Force in a cybersecurity unit under Special Operations Department. I can tell you that for us, cybersecurity was always on top of our priority, whether it's because of national security or whether it's to protect any kind of asset that is exposed to terror attacks. So we see more hacking events in Israel. It's always hacking events, and it's on top of our game.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Malte, what would be your opinion?
So you spoke to a very important recent event. Obviously, this crisis is driving this in behavior. We see, and we have many banking customers, a dramatic change to more electronic, more cashless payments, more contactless payments. That drives a lot of changes, of course, in the behavior of attackers, but of course also of users and prevention as well as security. Second to that, the current crisis is dramatically speeding up digitalization, which is in many areas a good thing. In many areas, the solutions are there, but they have been laggards. So whether it's telehealth, whether it's remote access to machines, whether it's e-government, those areas are now speeding up, of course, digitalization, and that brings whole new user types. I mean, the brown workers, the workers who have been on shop floors, they suddenly have to face remote access to their machinery. That gives new attack surface, but also it gives, of course, new needs for prevention and security. So the current crisis teaches us to digitalize faster, and in order to enable that, to build cybersecurity into many new areas, which I think mid to long term will be a good thing.
Okay. And Thomas, what would you say?
Yeah, I just want to continue where Malte left off, because exactly that's what we are seeing when our SEC defense team analyzes specific security incidents, that with more and more people out there who are forced to work remotely, who are not that tech savvy, are more and more falling victim to phishing attacks, to targeted attacks. And what the attackers are doing is basically taking the credentials they get, log in via VPN, and compromise the networks directly. What's also interesting to observe is that the dwell time, the time until a successful attack is discovered, actually shortens. And that's a good thing, because the attacker is less and less time active in the network before he gets detected. The not so good aspect of this trend is that it's usually not the company itself detecting the breach, but it's often external parties identifying that there has been an issue and telling the companies affected. And I talked to our SEC defense team about what's the most critical challenge at the moment for them. And they told me that it's the lack of collecting evidence. Many organizations don't prepare accordingly. They start doing this more and more. But often when they have forensic investigations, they don't find the data, they don't find the artifacts they require to analyze the incident. So it's critical for the companies to prepare better to support forensic investigations.
Okay, thank you. And Ritus, do you have anything to add?
Actually, I agree on most of what was said by colleagues, but want to add that we feel in Lithuania that in the past years the sophistication of cyber attacks is increasing. And for example, last year our annual report showed that the amount of incidents that needed to be processed by specialists increased it 3 times. In Lithuania, we registered more than 3,000 incidents that was needed for specialists to be processed, handled, and even more thousands of incidents that were processed during with automatic tools, special intrusion detection system sensors within the network. So that is the dangerous thing. And I as well would like to point that financial sector is very much targeted only last year, we in Lithuania registered cybercrime incidents that our citizens in the country lost 1.5 million euros. And it's only what was registered officially, I believe. Much more cyber incidents on financial sectors are not registered and processed. And answering on a question how is different between the countries, actually I believe that is similar to most of our countries that we are talking, because internet is without the borders. So the incidents that are detected in the internet, in the network, global, is spreading around the world, so should be common for all of them, for all of us. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So we all agree that the number of cybersecurity incidents is increasing, and there are more and more hacking related incidents occurring. There's a change of behavior of attackers, but at the same time, due to a lot of people moving to online working environment, there are easier victims. And there's lack of data for investigation from companies. Right, let's focus on fintech then. Which cybersecurity threats are in particular significant to fintech? We touched on financial sector overall, but what would you say are particularly important to fintech? Do you feel they differ in various regions within Europe or even further? Thomas, I would like to start with you. I think you are muted, Thomas.
Yes, you're totally right. I was muted. Sorry about that.
No
I fully agree that the internet is borderless, and I don't see a real distinction when it comes to cyber threats. But what at least here in Austria I have been seeing during the last year is that the regulators definitely stepped up their game a lot. It's probably also the case in many other countries, but they became way more stricter during their audits. They are taking cybersecurity much more seriously. And if your security posture is lacking in this regards, you will definitely have a bad time when it comes to those audits. Talking about the cyber threat specifically, I don't think there's a difference between the different regions, but we see a steep increase in targeted malware against smartphones. And when we're talking about online banking and we're talking about strong customer authentication, if this important factor is compromised, yes, this has a huge impact, and therefore this would be the highest rated change when it comes to fintech, in my opinion.
Okay, brilliant. And May, do you have anything to add or contradict maybe to Thomas?
Not contradict. I definitely agree. I would add that in our field, the attack that we see recently by financial institutions are a lot of phishing events that are happening, and many in the middle attacks when people are trying to change data, whether it's in the blockchain space, our area, when people just send, for example, a new addressee to receive the money by emails, and they could be compromised. Or people, when they try to do everything online, get a lot of phishing events. So I would agree and add that those are the kind of attacks we see all the time and have to face and help the bank to cope.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And before we move to our next question, I would like to address our audience. Please don't feel us like it's only 5 of us talking. Please ask questions and make this panel discussion even more interactive. So let's move on to the next question, which is about fintechs focusing too much on user experience and key features rather than on cybersecurity. Do you agree with this statement or not? And what are the criteria for success in creating secure financial technology? Rytis, I would like to address this question to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, from my side, as I see especially in Lithuania, a lot of startups in fintech sector. And when we speak with them about the cybersecurity, we feel that the main issue for those startups usually is to start a business, actually, to start up, and security will come later. So the main focus on starting a company, making clients, making applications up and running, I think it could be a wrong strategy. Not paying attention on competences in cybersecurity right from the beginning. It could cause incidents, cyber attacks on a database, and could compromise the whole our Lithuanian nation as fintech nation reputation. That's my worry about, and yeah, I believe you are right that the focus on financial issues on clients and users side could be could cause incidents later, and incidents in cybersecurity that damage the reputation for fintech technology could cause us a lot of problems in the future. That's my opinion to discuss. Thanks.
Right. Malta, what would be your thoughts? Is the situation any different in Germany?
Well, I think it would be unfair to put all fintechs into like one bucket, which claims that they are not aware of the necessary security kind of boundaries and fundaments they have to build up. I think it really depends on the business model. We have customers who are fintechs and engage in crypto asset brokerage. They absolutely know that high security is very important, is core to their business model. And we see now others, and that is a good thing, that regulation also can create markets and break it up, who try to use PSD2 to provide new services, and they may not be aware of the complexity of what you really need to access other people's financial data to make now a new business model, to build a virtual bank, and they may not know complex situations like digital signatures, eIDAS guidelines, what is behind that, what you need to have established. So they're looking either for partners or for other solutions, cloud solutions, to deliver them those necessary security fundamentals. So I think overall it depends. We will have a big need everywhere for much more awareness, consulting, teaching, and information, what is necessary to enable these digital business models. And as we see many fintechs bundling very interesting services with new IoT applications. I mean, it could be my car, which automatically pays for the parking lot, and it needs to be payment compliant. We need that knowledge base in much wider areas of the industry. What is necessary to truly provide secure financial, secure payments, secure authentication solutions.
And how do you think that knowledge could be transferred then?
Well, that is a very big, and if not maybe the key, because if we look into current forecasts, there will be until 2003 about 2 million cybersecurity experts lacking all over in the world. So many more companies or service companies will look for experts, will look from ready-made with all the certification and security built into that. It is a big challenge that we have that knowledge gap, and the attackers have the unfair advantage that while they only have to find one hole and one attack vector, we have to protect as defenders all of them, not knowing where they will attack. So it is really a knowledge gap. We all need to work in the industry with smart solutions, with integrated platforms, with services, but also with attracting much more talent through education into the IT and cybersecurity sector.
Right. Okay. But I'm curious, how important then is regulation, and what are and should be the key regulating bodies for making sure that fintechs are creating secure technologies? Ritas, because you are our public sector representative, my eyes are towards you.
Well, actually, I think not only regulation that is important, even more important perhaps could be a third party's testing and security of this and assessing, for example, applications that we are, for fintech technology, we are having more and more such applications running to test cybersecurity, to have a competent third body that could do that assessments is very important to set up the sooner the better. And regulation will follow after that. I think that's my opinion.
Okay. Thomas, maybe you have anything to add from a slightly different private sector perspective?
Yes, I definitely agree that a testing body would be great to have, but we have to discuss about application security and system security right from the beginning. Building security in is crucial. Having verification, having testing is very, very important, but it actually starts with the planning and with the requirements engineering. And that's where I see many organizations currently failing or investing too little, starting right at the beginning and thinking security as a whole process. The good news is there are established standards. For example, OWASP-SAM, the Security Assurance Maturity Model, is a great standard. It's open, it's available to everyone. It describes 30 activities which you should do throughout your development lifecycle to create really resilient and secure application. It's out there, you just have to use it, you have to implement this. But you have to make this decision to invest in your security and to be properly prepared. And once you make this decision, the information on how to do this is out there.
Right, okay. And there's an open question for any of the panelists, so feel free to answer, whoever wants. How should the regulators keep up with the fast-forward digitalization and developments in fintech?
Well, I can say something that the regulator is doing in Israel, for example. So they're doing meetings where they invite leading companies in the market, whether it's fintech companies that are working with many financial institutions, whether it's cybersecurity companies that are aware to the risks that exist in the market. And they hear us. They hear what we hear outside, what we want to develop. I can tell that in Israel, we have a lot of freedom with try new technologies and get them regulated quite quickly. So they listen a lot to the small companies, to the fintech, to the startups, and really work with us to form the right regulation. They also have an open forum where they can basically get requests from civilians. They see exactly what people want to have. So, for example, if banks want to add another functionality that is currently not possible in different countries and not regulated yet, they can approach the regulator and they can test it quite easily. And if they see that it works, it gets passed and regulated on a fast track.
Right, okay. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, and with one of them we're going to move slightly from fintech, and it's going to be towards, in general, working from home. So the question goes, most businesses moved to their employees operating from home during the pandemic. What are the main threats that you can address, and what are your recommendations to secure communication channels? Who would like to take up this question?
So I can start maybe with our specific perspective. We provide secure identification, authentication, and encryption solutions. So I have a very specific view to that. And of course, many of our customers face this right now. So making sure in this newly distributed working environment, you can properly authenticate all of the elements you suddenly have distributed and not anymore within your classic control. So whether you permit employees to work and connect to sensitive areas of your business, of your production, from their private networks, from their private devices, with new means of authentication. You may use different ones than in the office. Make sure that your principal paradigm is everything has to be verified. So it's kind of a zero trust model, which is a good way of thinking this, and it's a much more important way as we work in this very remote area. So also we have in our German cybersecurity industries had many critical developers of critical networks and systems work suddenly remotely. And we had an intensive discussion with the auditors as well as with the general office here, the Federal Office of Information Security, how this can be enabled in even the most sensitive areas. And the good news is there are solutions for that. It's much more important than the exact technical solution that your paradigm of thinking security is the right one, that you want to authenticate everything, every data access, every system access, every employee, every device to your distributed situation, whatever that is, whether that is a power plant or a sensitive software.
Right, and do you see that many organizations that send their employees to work from home, that they already started, applying those security measures and thinking about restricted access to certain files and folders?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've seen many with encrypt everything strategies, but I mean, in such a pandemic, of course, the threat is, first of all, you want to continue your business. So it also has to be a balance between business continuity, the awareness of the threats, and then the technical means you can implement fast. Organizations who were very far along the process of encrypting as much as possible, using zero trust models, having access and authentication based really also on strong root of trust, not on weak elements, whatever that is, they certainly were quicker. I think why we have seen many IT organizations do this work from home model in a very fast way, and why unfortunately, and we've seen the same here in Germany, education, some parts of government, telehealth and so on, were lagging behind. But that will change right now. So we see that all organizations see that it is not acceptable to not have a distributed work environment enabled, even if you don't need to use it all the time, but it has to be enabled, and you have to think through those models.
Right. Well, let's hope that these practices stay in put even then the workforce comes back to the office, just in case there's another wave of pandemic or something else, and there's a need to work from home in such large amounts again. Let's go back to fintechs again, and we have a question about cyber defense. So what are the best practices for defense for fintechs? May, what would be your thoughts on this?
Right. Best approach for defense is to think like a hacker. It's basically to define who could be your hacker. It could be from an internal job, or it could be from outside. How would the hacker think? That would be the right approach to take. I definitely agree with what Malte said. Basically, we need to protect an overall holistic solution from everything, while a hacker only needs to find one breach of security, and that's it. So, thinking like a hacker or doing isolated solutions, which will prevent all attack vector if possible, that will be the right approach to take. I can tell that once we start developing the solution, our solution, we had to find the right balance between the user experience and the security. And because in our field, in the blockchain space, blockchain is irreversible protocol, we took the security to extreme and hired, and basically all our team are from ex-cybersecurity and elite unit that served under the Israeli Prime Minister office, because they are hackers and they know how the hackers think. So that's the right approach that we decided to take, and that's the approach I believe should be taken.
Right. Thomas, would you like to add anything to May?
I fully agree with the threat assessment approach. Just try to identify what are the main attack vectors or what can go wrong and what would be the most critical things that can happen to your organization. And very likely, in addition to the technical measures you have to take, you also have to invest into the people and in the awareness of the people, especially your employees who are working remote from home office for the first time, who are not used to this new scenario, are especially exposed. We know we as human beings, we love our rituals, we love our day to day, we are familiar with what we are doing, the same processes, the same people, we are interacting the same way. And suddenly, without warning, we have to change completely. We only talk to each other via communication channels like this one. We have remote meetings. We don't meet our boss face to face. And scenarios like the CEO fraud scenario or other scenarios where people are targeted directly are much more likely to work with people who are not aware about the threats, who cannot easily identify the different attack actors that may want to compromise them. So in addition to the technical security measures, I highly recommend thinking about training your people properly, investing in proper awareness. This can range from larger awareness trainings to just simple things like sending regular reminder emails, some kind of activities that neatly integrate in the daily practices to remind the people to be more aware about the different threats.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Thomas and May. We have a very interesting question that will go to Ritis, and it goes like this: how you define standards or levels of cybersecurity for fintechs? What could be the criteria?
Well, it is difficult to safeguard everyone and everything from cybersecurity threats and incidents. And we believe in Lithuania that it's a good strategy to pick up critical infrastructures and put higher security standards for those critical infrastructures, because they are essential services for a society. And I believe the fintech and financial sector in general are one of those critical infrastructures whose cybersecurity should be on a higher standard, and it's the practice we will already use. For example, Lithuania has more than 100 critical infrastructures identified by the government and institutions as our institutions. National Cybersecurity Centers is responsible to regulating, putting higher standards, working with cyber incidents that are targeting those critical infrastructures, putting the priority as well to the fintech in general as a critical infrastructures.
Okay, thank you. And May, what's the situation then in terms of standards, standard levels of cybersecurity for fintechs in Israel? Is it any different?
Well, the fintechs in Israel usually do not work in Israel. We usually work with different financial institutions abroad, and we need to comply with their regulation. So whether it's in Hong Kong, that every new solution just comes out and the bank wants to provide to their customer, we need to get regulation approval. Also in Taiwan, so really the fintechs in Israel just comply with every financial institution that they're working with that regulation in that country.
Right. Okay. And Thomas, do you have anything to add?
Well, here in Austria, it's not really fintech specific, but I have been working with the Austrian Standards Institute for many years, defining such standards like the A7700, which is basically a requirements catalog for secure web applications, which is of course crucial and also mandatory in Austria to use for online banking application and similar fintech application, but it's not fintech specific. So I'm not really aware of any fintech specific standards, but there are technical standards available also here in Austria for application system security.
Right. And Malta, do you have any final thoughts on this question?
I think positively, and we spent a lot of effort and time and cost in complying with regulations and making sure our products are certified according to some regulations. I think positively, certain compliance with these regulations can be a business enabler. So we have some fintech certified their solution as the first ones against some BaFin regulations here in Germany for crypto asset trading, and it was for them a clear USP. If regulators think in a smart way, they can also generate or at least help to generate positive market potential. For that, they need to make sure that the culture, the behavior is put into part of that regulation. Particular payment behavior is very, very different in different parts of at least Europe and the world. But also they need to think in terms of scale. So thinking where their regulation can be positively promoted. Maybe the best regulation from Europe was GDPR. That can be a business enabler even for fintechs.
Right. Okay. Thank you all. And because the time is chasing us, so let's move to the future, because we said it's not going to be only about the current threats, but also about the future prospects. So what is the potential impact of artificial intelligence developments within the cybersecurity field, and how this may benefit fintech? Thomas, what would be your thoughts?
Yeah, that's quite a broad question, because there are so many aspects, because artificial intelligence can be utilized by the attackers as well as by the defenders. And what we have seen in the past is this rat race where the attackers are trying something new and the defenders have to catch up, and once it's not working anymore what the attackers are doing, they have to improvise, they have to come up with new attacks, and the defenders have to catch up. When we're talking about artificial intelligence, this process will definitely speed up, and taking a look at things like adversarial neural networks, which basically try to outcompete each other at different and more or less arbitrary tasks. I suspect that this will have an impact during the next years in seeing increased and more advanced attack techniques, but also more potential to defend against the same attacks.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like a little bit of a mouse and cat game without artificial intelligence then in cybersecurity. May, what would be your thoughts?
I definitely agree. I believe that we see AI is incorporated in the cybersecurity space since it started, whether it's solution to try to find anomaly in attacks. And just like Thomas said, it is the cat and mouse approach, because you try to find an anomaly and they try to do it in a way that you will not find it. So we'll just see more and more sophisticated attacks happening, and the attackers are becoming a lot more sophisticated.
Right. Okay. Malte?
I mentioned earlier that we have this unfortunate gap in it only needs one attacker, but it needs many defenders, and we have the lack of defenders forecasted for the future. So we need the help of machine learning, AI, of these technologies to make as much as possible automation of the defensive work, intelligence, anomaly detection, everything we can imagine there. And actually, even on the obfuscation side, to make it harder and more manual labor for the attackers. AI can greatly help us to bridge the resource gap between attackers and defenders, and therefore everything we can do around that can only be helpful.
Right. So it seems that mostly positive notes towards artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, but do you see any dangers in that as well? Rytis?
Well, of course, it. Go ahead, Rytis.
Well, yes, actually. Our Lithuanian National Cybersecurity Center is the only one in the European Union, actually, that do have an R&D division. We have scientific people, actually, that are working for the past 2 years on artificial intelligence system, as Malte said, to use for defense purpose. We are developing next generation sensor that we already have a prototype using artificial intelligence system for better detection and early warning systems with intrusion detection, those sensors. And you asked, Julia, about the dangers, and we recently, when we set up this first interaction of our next generation sensor with artificial intelligence system, and we tried to put on the networks to test, we observed that we have a problem that artificial systems with the core of AI is self-learning process could be foolish, or how to say, the hackers could influence learning of AI process that it would go in a wrong direction, and hackers could bypass those artificial intelligence systems of IDS and IPS sensors. And that's the dangers that we are investigating, and we collaborated recently with European projects to put a research project within the Lithuania to investigate and to find solution how to have the correct AI learning process for cyber defense purpose. Thank you.
And Malte, would you like to add anything or maybe contradict?
Well, I would express the hope that these technologies help the defenders more in automate our smart processes, but let's not be naive. There is definitely also a threat potential, and the threat potential is maybe biggest in networks we don't yet, I would say, understand as we do in the general enterprise IT network. We have spent the last more than 20 years in defending standard enterprise IP-based networks, and now we are getting into decades where we are connecting new production networks. We are connecting a lot of legacy technology because a big factory is not exchanging for the newest machinery everything at the same day. For ages, you have legacy technology in huge telco networks, in huge energy networks, in huge production networks, but they all combine now with new IT access, and that means threats. So if AI is massively used to speed up the process in propagating threats into those OT type networks, then we may be in a dramatic cat and mouse game. So my hope can just be that we are, as an industry, also the regulators and end users, putting security by design properly into those systems before we see AI being malused for propagating threats into these OT networks.
Okay.
If I may jump in,
Sure.
what I see as a really, really big threat when it comes to AI is that what we traditionally do is we write algorithms, and we can analyze these algorithms for vulnerabilities. At the current moment, when we are talking about neural network and self-learning algorithms, we basically write a program, an algorithm, that designs an algorithm, and it's really, really hard to analyze and really intransparent. And where we are going at the moment is taking the next step, is meta-learning. And meta-learning basically means we are writing algorithms that choose and design the right algorithm that defines the correct algorithm that's actually running. And once you're at this moment, the lack of transparency becomes really, really obvious, and you have to use technology which you do not really know what it's actually doing and how it is making its decisions.
So what could be the possible solution to that?
Well, I think we need to go back. I would suggest to verify again more. Yeah. So particularly in those algorithms who are being further developed and enhanced, making sure with technologies like digital signatures, stamping, fingerprinting. I mean, we have a number of technologies at our hands to make sure that I properly understand each and every state. Yeah, the moment how I bought the car with the autonomous driving system or assistance, and also the moment where somebody's updating this car to the new algorithm. Yeah, I need to make sure, for many, many reasons, for not only security but also safety and liability, that I can retroactively verify each and every state. That at least gives us some transparency and control what may be then happening and changing through AI and those algorithm development.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Our audience wants us to move slightly from fintech again towards general cybersecurity field. The question goes like this. You mentioned a lack of talent in cybersecurity space. Is there a market-wide accepted certification for cybersecurity and education programs that you could name? I guess that that could be different in all of the countries. So let's start with May with Israel.
For us, it's very different, because no matter which background you're coming, no matter what you learn at school, once you turn 18, you join the military. And the biggest unit in the military is intelligence. So basically, no matter what you learn in school, whether it was a theater, whether it was literature, if you're joining the intelligence force, you're going through 3 years of basically tough training in one of the toughest neighborhoods on cybersecurity, whether it's programming, very long hours, very stressful job. So it's very different in Israel because of the nature of the country and because of the nature of our military and how it's built. I would say that also in Israel, we have a lot of programs that the government is encouraging. So whether you're 30, 40, 50 and want to go suddenly into the cybersecurity space, there's a lot of free programs that you can take. There's a lot of free mentoring programs as well that the government is sponsoring to help people go more into the tech field. So it's very different in my country because we're really cybersecurity oriented here.
Right. Okay. Thomas?
Well, there are so many different certifications actually that it's hard to pinpoint the right one, and it usually depends a lot on the actual field you're working at. For example, our SEC defense experts who are working in forensic and investigation of incidents, they do total different trainings and certifications than the people who do the penetration testing and do the security code reviews and doing the architecture analysis. Again, there are different certifications when it comes to secure software development, security architecture, and so on. So just to name some acronyms will not really help you in this regard. But from my experience, I'm also responsible for recruiting at my company, and I have seen so many CVs of people who are full of different certifications and large lists of those acronyms. To really find out if those people are skilled, you have to talk to them. You have to see what they are actually capable of, because just judging from the certification, you can't. There are some out there, for example, some SANS certifications who are really good, and you won't pass them if you are skilled. But there are also a lot of them you can just pass by learning a few weeks and forget everything afterwards. So I wouldn't put too much value on those certifications.
Right, but they mostly sound that you can get those or acquire those certifications once you get experience. But what is the situation in Austria in terms of growing that talent in cybersecurity from university, for example?
Luckily, we have some great universities in Austria who have dedicated cybersecurity how do you say it, branches that educate the people. So at least 4 or 5 different institutions come to mind where we recruit our people from. But in the end, they lay a good groundwork. They give them a good foundation. In the end, it comes down to proper training, usually training on the job, because most of our people are doing penetration testing and security code reviews. And to do this in the wild is actually pretty difficult. So when they're coming from the universities, they have some project experience, but to really get in the nitty-gritty details, they need the training on the job, and they have to spend their years working in those projects to get the experience they need to grow. And of course, we do have such programs, and we also invest in people. There's something like a development bonus, which everyone is able to invest in his education, where he can do training courses, where he can visit conferences and so on. But
right.
Yeah, it comes with experience and it comes with time.
Right. Rytis, what would you say Lithuania, or how is Lithuania doing in terms of growing their cybersecurity talents?
Well, actually, Thomas described it very well about the private sector situation and private certification system, that there are plenty of them, and it's good. I think universities and education system is lacking on cybersecurity. We do cooperate with our, in Lithuania, for example, with our technology universities, which we have quite a strong, and they do have cybersecurity programs, bachelor and master degrees, but it's not enough. We are hiring those people, but we are struggling in getting educated already specialists. For example, my authority in the past 2 years from 30 employees grow to 63, and it's in that process was quite challenging to find the experts. And what we do, actually, we are hiring young people with informatic and programming skills only, and we teach internally in our organizations. We have systems and the process how to educate and train people, those specialists, to be able to react to incidents properly, work with the same artificial intelligence system and Trojan detection sensors that we do have. So perhaps our way is to train internally, have the training systems inside the organization, but because it's quite difficult to get already educated and certified specialists, or they maybe cost more than we in a public sector can afford.
Okay, and Malte, what about Germany? Is the situation similar?
We have also a lack, of course, of experts, particularly in the industries who are not core IT, but like manufacturing, automotive. They are all looking for cybersecurity experts. We have a number of good universities. We as Ultimaco have ourselves, therefore, also created a joint venture with one university which already has applied IT security on site, and we've transformed that into an international model. So you can join this as online course. We have students from all over the world there, and the same professors who teach this on site drive you through a multi-year online certification to get a master. This is only a little help, but I agree with all my predecessors who spoke to this. There can only be more experts in all industries, and for this, it's a combination of education but also practical experience. So whether you look for a basic education or you look for something really in-depth, make sure that this is not a one-time event, that you choose something where you continue to be part of a community, where you join really a community of practitioners who help you to stay up to date, because cybersecurity is a very fast-moving area. It's good to have deep basics and to have good understanding, but you also need to stay current. So maybe the situation in Germany is that we are aware, but also we by far don't have enough experts. So we are trying on all elements and with all levers to create more.
Right. Okay. Thank you all. And now, as our time is coming to close, our discussion time is coming to close. So we have one final question, which asks us to provide a tip or a couple of tips for end users in terms of fintech. What would be our security tips for the end users of fintech technology? Malte?
Protect your identity. However you authenticate, protect your identity.
Okay, Rytis?
My advice would be for end users to be very critical, because we are getting, as end users, social engineering attempts from the hackers via social media, emails, etc. So first of all, be critical for all those links and files that we are getting, not to open, not to follow the links which can lead in malicious websites, and we as users can lose money.
Okay, thank you. May?
I agree with both of the previous answers, and I would add, don't send yourself all your password to everything by email, and don't use the same password for everything, for just stupid websites that want you to log in and then use the same password to log into your bank account. So just not use the same password everywhere.
Right, okay, so password security. And Thomas?
Well, basically stay alert and stay critical. When someone approaches you, especially people you don't know, or if someone you actually know and who contacts you over different channel, stay really critical and ensure that the interest of this person is aligned with your interests. We are seeing so many attacks via LinkedIn, for example, where people are addressed directly with job offers or stuff like this. And the idea, of course, is to do espionage and similar attacks. Don't install anything from third parties, and really reconsider sharing anything with anyone if you're not 100% secure that's the person you are expecting to talk to.
Right, so be cautious and double check. Okay, thank you all. So today in our panel discussion, cybersecurity increased risks in the current environment, we had May Michelson from JK8, Malte Polman from Ultimaco, Thomas Kerbel from Seconsult Group, Dr. Rytis Rainys from National Cybersecurity Center of Lithuania, and myself, Živilė Nečiauskaitė from NRD Cybersecurity. Thank you very much.